Our next guest was a four-year player for the Terps from 2004 to 2008 under Gary Williams after attending local Good Counsel High School. He was a 1,000-plus point scorer for the Terps, ACC All-Defensive Team, second team All-ACC, and he just wrapped up a 16-year professional career overseas, playing for about a dozen teams. This is our second time having him on, so James, yes, thank you for coming on.
No problem, man. Appreciate y'all having me. Hope all is well. And
Yeah.
thanks again. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So like I said, just wrapped up very long professional career overseas. Just kind of, was that a difficult decision to hang up the sneakers and say this is it? How'd you kind of come to that decision?
What's crazy is that to walk away from it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be, only
Mhm.
because the motivation and the reason that I did it, it wasn't there anymore. And I always told myself, I never played the game of basketball for money. I knew that, when you did do something really well, that stuff comes with it. But I really only played because I wanted to win. And I wanted to win at the highest level, and I wanted to contribute to that on the teams that I played with in the last couple of years. The teams that I was playing for, they were great organizations, but the aspirations, wasn't that championship mentality that I was used to. And to go overseas, or not necessarily overseas, but to go somewhere and just to play, for fun, just because it didn't sit well with me as a player. And I felt like, once I got to that point that, I would step away from the game, and I had more patience to teach the game. I have more patience to teach it. And so right now I've just been trying to transition into coaching, doing my best with that. But yeah, it wasn't so hard walking away from the game playing wise, because I just, I'd done everything. Done everything. I won. I traveled the world. I played some of the biggest organizations, the biggest fan bases. And so, now I just kind of want to teach the stuff that I learned along the way.
When you were kind of going through that decision, how much were you able to follow, during that time, Maryland's run to the tournament? Were you able to watch, everything that happened with Kevin Willard? What was kind of the process there when you're overseas to be able to still tune into the Terps?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tried my best to keep up with the Terps, since I've left. It's been kind of difficult to watch college basketball now that I played professional for so long, only because, it's just the pace of the game is so much faster. There's a lot of stuff. The shot clock is longer. Some of the stuff is just it's hard to watch. But this past year, I actually was home, and I was able to attend a lot of the Terps games. I was doing some post game commentary with Terp Talk and Wayne Viner and those guys, and being at some of the games, being able to see the Maryland team that we had this past season was pretty cool. The season started off kind of slow, with the support not being there as much, but as the season picked up, it just more fans and more, fire started coming out of Xfinity Center. And like you said, to the run that they had this year in the tournament, it was a good ride, man. It was good to just be a part of and witness. Really exciting, especially being a Terps fan.
And now that you're back home, kind of a two-parter. First, when did you first kind of discover that you want to do coaching once your playing career ended? Was that something that kind of always had on your mind that you knew you'd try to get into? And then now at home, kind of what are you doing with coaching? Have you gotten involved with any local high schools, colleges in the area, any local clinics or training centers?
So coaching has kind of been an aspiration of mine for at least the last 5, 6 years. 5, 6 years of me playing, I knew that once I was done, because I had the opportunity to be coached by coaches like Gary Williams, Greg Popovich with San Antonio, Rick Pitino, when I was in Panathinaikos, he's a legendary coach too, for all the people, the fan base in America that know those names. I was coached by a lot of other coaches too overseas that, are really, really smart and really gifted in what they do. And just being able to be on that side and be coached by them and understand, the value and what things you have to do to win, what goes into winning as an organization, that rubbed off on me. And I just want to be able to keep that going, as a coach, once I was done playing. Since I've been done, I've been here back home working out, training kids actually at this gym in Rockville called ProFit. It's been kind of fun, just getting my face back out there in the community, getting to teach the young kids, the younger generation, this next grassroots generation, let's say, the game of basketball, and through my expertise and through my lens, and that's just been fun. The winter season, I picked up AAU team through the gym that I was working at, so I was able to coach some eighth graders, and that was a fun experience. That was a fun experience. First time doing it, I was able to take a team that probably wasn't that good. I had some players on there that hadn't played 5-on-5 at all before, and so giving them an opportunity, teaching them, showing them what it's like to play with other players on the court. How it is to score and play defense. We managed to get a couple wins this season, and so that was really encouraging to me because I realized that what I was doing worked and that it could impact many levels, when it comes to the game of basketball. So it's just something fun to be around, but I really want to get into the bigger things. I want to get into college basketball. I want to try to get into the NBA as far as coaching. As a player, I was at the highest level, and now as a coach, I want to try to win at the highest level. That's just a goal of mine. It's an aspiration of mine, and I'm working towards that.
And it sounds like a couple other former players who played under Coach Williams, they're trying to throw their name into the ring for Buzz Williams' new staff now in College Park. Are you trying to get involved at all with this new staff coming along?
Oh, most definitely, man. The last couple of years I've been tapping in with Maryland, trying to set some feelers out there and seeing how I can, transition. What would be the best way? And this is a little bit prior to me actually retiring from playing basketball, because I know once I retired that it was going to be a time period where I got to figure out what I want to do next. But in my mind, I already knew what I wanted to do next. I know I wanted to coach. But now it's like, how do you go about doing that? Who do you got to talk to? How do you get your foot in the door? What are the things you got to do to build a resume in order to be considered? So that's kind of what I've been doing, networking the last couple of years. And, this year, unexpectedly, we didn't expect Willard to lead the program the way he did. But, with that happening, to open a new door for Coach Buzz to come in. And, Maryland has done a good job of setting the red carpet up for him to transition from A&M to try to bring, that tradition here, that winning tradition. But it is my aspiration. It is my goal to try to get on staff, man. I got a chance to meet with Buzz at the press conference about a week ago, just to introduce myself formally and things like that. But in that nature, I understand it's a process. There are people that are ahead of the game, and so I understand how it goes. But it is, a goal of mine to try to get on the bench. If it's not at Maryland, then hopefully somewhere. I just feel like I could be a benefit to any program. Once I get my foot in the door.
You mentioned your aspirations for coaching have kind of, come up in the past 5 or 6 years. Obviously, you were playing basketball the past 5 or 6 years. Did you feel like later in your career you felt more like a coach on the floor, even a coach on the bench when you're playing overseas in the past 5, 6 years?
Most definitely. I was always a leader in the locker room. I was always a leader, a presence on the floor. And I spent a lot of time on the court, for a long period of time. North of like 10 years, I probably was on the court 36 minutes out of a 40-minute game overseas. For offensive reasons, for defensive reasons, just for everything. But the impact that I had as a player, a lot of people, they kind of listened to me, I guess. They listened to me, but I also had a good grasp of the game. Coaches could tell me something one time, I could pick it up and go with it. You didn't have to give me a whole, rundown of what exactly you want me to do. And it even got to the point to where in practice, because the coaches that I had played for, they knew I wanted to be a coach. They knew the way I talked about basketball to them, or during the game, I might see something. I'm like, Coach, let's run the play like this with a different type of action. Does it? Works. And so they know how my mind works. And so at the end of practices, sometimes coach would be like Patino one time. He was like, man, you'll take your 5. I got my 5. We're going to run, 1 or 2 plays. You set up the defense. I got the offense. We'll see if it works. I've had a couple coaches do that because for one, it's fun, but two, it's like you get a chance to see like in the moment, how are you going to react? What are you going to guard? And so some of the coaches that I've we've had moments like that within practice to give me that opportunity just to see what I would do strategically. But just from a standpoint of knowing the game and just being able to give knowledge of the game, that's just always something that, has been a part of me. Coach Gary Williams actually taught me to be a student of the game when I went to Maryland. I think that's kind of where it started. It's how to watch tape. A lot of people don't know how to watch video. They watch for the highlight reels, or they watch for, the main pictures as opposed to watching how did that build up? Where did the momentum come from? Where did the switch happen? Why did why was this player so open? It wasn't just because of the bounce pass that happened. It might have happened 3 things before that. But, to understand that, it takes, time, it takes, the willingness to learn the game. And Coach Williams, he taught me that. And so that's just something that I've kept my whole career. It's something that I'm hoping that I can give back to this next generation of players.
I wanted to ask you, when you're talking about, Mike mentioned the former players. When a coaching search happens, like when Maryland hired Buzz Williams, or when, Kevin Willard was kind of on the way out, do you have like a group chat of like former guys or like alumni guys on your team that you were texting or former teammates and being like, hey, like, did you see the news? Like, can you remember your reactions to some of the events that have kind of happened over the past couple weeks?
I mean, it really happened kind of fast. I wouldn't say I have a group chat with the former players and stuff like this, but you do have a network of people that you talk to, who's all kind of paying close attention. One, because you're fans, but two, because you have a vested interest in what goes on with the University of Maryland, especially with the basketball program. Um, and so when it came out that Willard wasn't sure, like he was on the fence, and this is during the tournament. I mean, it's like second round or top 16, I believe, when the news came out, and then you had the AD, Damon Evans leaving as well. So it kind of like stirred the pot a little bit while the season was still going, and so that kind of brought up a lot of attention to like what's going to happen with Maryland. Um, and then him leaving, and then the matter of 48 hours, 72 hours, I think it was, they were able to find a new head coach for that position. Um, you can talk about it with friends, you can talk about it with people that you network, but you can't really plan for situations like that, especially because it's not in your control. You kind of just got to sit back and see what happens and how it plays out. You just try to put yourself in position to be able to contribute, I guess. That's the way I look at it.
Do you think that, just for a former player, can you explain to us, like, for the guys in Maryland's locker room, right, that kind of have an idea or all this stuff is happening, before you're about to play a huge game in the Sweet 16, like, it's easy for them to tell the media, hey, like, that doesn't affect us. And we don't know, truthfully. But if you were a player in that situation, how do you think that affected the locker room, kind of Willard's, the drama that had happened throughout the week and leading up to the game? Do you think it happened at all or affected it at all? And what would have the tenor of the locker room been?
9 times out of 10, um, the people in the locker room are aware of what's going on well before the media gets a hold of it, and well before the rest of the world gets a hold of it. So I don't know or think that the news coming out the way it did probably had a serious major impact on the team in the locker room in that moment. Your mind is just focused on playing. Your mind is focused on what y'all have built the whole season. And throughout the season, you're going to get stuff like that happens. Media, that's just what media does. You can't really pay attention to that. It's a distraction. As a player, you can't focus on the outside noise. You can only focus on what's in front of you. And I'm pretty sure that Coach Willard and the rest of the coaching staff did a really good job of trying to keep the team protected from the negativity or the, let's say, distractions from it. But I mean, in this line of business, that's just what it is. And now it's become more prevalent, with social media and the way that things are going. You have more access to people. You have more access to the life and the decisions that goes on into it. And now it's capable of hitting the internet very fast, as opposed to having to wait for the next day to catch a highlight or wait for the weekend newspaper to come out to really read up on what happened this week in sports. Now it's boom, right then and there. So, I mean, that's a factor that you have to deal with. You have to understand that when you're under the microscope, everything you do is going to be scrutinized. Everything you do is going to be talked about. And with that said, you still have to keep a level mindset so you can go out there and compete. So what happens in the world doesn't matter. Nobody cares. You still have to go out there and play. And I think that that's the message that has to be pushed regardless of what hits the media, when it hits the media, and how players should react.
I guess just then the follow up there is, what did you think of the Buzz Williams hire? Kind of, can you give your perspective on him as a coach and what he could bring to Maryland?
I mean, he's well decorated. When first and foremost, he has the resume. He's proven, and all the programs that he's been to, he's taken them from one level and taking it to a higher level. Every program that he's been a part of. So with that being said, he has a philosophy, and he has a way that he runs things, and it works. It's proven. With that being said, a school like Maryland has to be able to move in a direction where, we're a top school. We're a top school. We're a competitive school, traditional wise. We've always been in the run for, let's say, postseason, accolades. So it only makes sense to bring in a coach that's decorated like Buzz. And he's done a great job throughout his career. Uh, and I'm sure that he's going to do a good job here at Maryland. I don't think Maryland made a wrong decision in what they did and who they selected. The very diligent process that they had to replace an AD in the meantime. They still got to replace a roster in the meantime. Like, it's a lot that has to happen in the next 2-3 weeks, and it's a lot of pressure on him to be able to do it as well. But I think that Maryland made the right decision in selecting that person, and they have everything around him that he will need in order to build a team to compete this year.
You had a former player, Len Elmore, come out and say that he wanted somebody in the family to be hired, kind of, either a Maryland alum or somebody with ties to the area. Buzz Williams obviously doesn't have either of those. What are your thoughts on that? Would you have wanted somebody who maybe was closer tied to the university, and why do you think Elmore came out and said that?
I mean, it's just, for so long, I think that, I don't want to say for so long, it feels like a long time, but, since Gary left, it's like we kind of moved away from bringing the alumni back in, I guess. I've been gone for 16 years, like you said, so I haven't been so close to the program to see how it moves and everything. I'm just now coming back into the picture. The time that I have been home to see the games and everything, it has been a different vibe. I will say just from a fan standpoint, with the students, filling out the section. I'm just used to Xfinity Center having like 17,000 every game. But again, when I played, we were in the ACC. Now we're in the Big Ten, so I don't know where the shift came. I don't know if it was because of coaching. I don't know if it was because of alumni not being as involved with the program. I don't know if it's because we're just not in the ACC anymore. But the thing that did change was that, there were no more alumni on the bench, I guess. With Gary, you had everybody who was there, with Jimmy Patsos, you had Keith Booth, you had Dave Dickerson, you had Chuck Drizel, Lefty's son, who served time on the staff. You had a lot of guys that came through, that were ex-Maryland players. And even when you look back at the championship teams, the ones that went to the back-to-back Final Fours and won, if you look at the pictures on their bench, or even at the ACC tournament, you look at the picture on their bench, that bench is just full of alumni, full of people that understand, what Maryland was about and the tradition that Maryland upheld. And I guess that's just probably what Len Elmore was kind of getting at. So as a ex-player, I understand it. But at the same time, times are changing. In this area, what ex-player as a coach do you have that has a resume like Buzz, to be honest? You have people that can actually help out with the program. Dwayne Simpkins is doing an amazing job at American. I know he was a candidate before Buzz got the job. But does he have the resume that Buzz does? And that's no shame to him. Juan Dixon did a great job, with what he's done since he retired, as a coach. He has a mind for it. But does he have a resume of what Buzz does? It's like you're putting a university in somebody's hands that has gone through it and won and actually made it to the NCAA tournament, made it to the promised land where we're trying to get to. That's what it's all about. So when you look at that and you're putting somebody in the driver's seat, what in this area do we really have? Now, you have people that could probably help and assist, but to put somebody in the driver's seat, I think we got to get to that point. But again, I don't think it was a bad hire bringing in Buzz. I do hope and feel that in some way we can kind of bring that alumni base back into Maryland, because you have so much talent around here, from coaches to players. There's so much. This DMV area is full of it, and everybody wants to be a part of Maryland, in some way, shape, or form. Maryland State School, the fan base, it's beyond me how many people really support Maryland, And so you see it as the team gets better and as the team gets good, you see all these people come out. They're wearing the Maryland gear, they're wearing their jerseys, they're supporting, the team. So you have a lot of people here that take it serious.
You bring up a good point there about, what coaches in the area have a better resume than Buzz. You also bring up a good point with the fans. That was a big topic of contention earlier this season about fan attendance in Xfinity, whether it's been lacking this year compared to previous seasons. I wanted to shift gears a little bit, talk about your former coach. You mentioned him earlier, Rick Pitino. He was in the NCAA tournament this year, 2 seed. Obviously, very exciting season for the Johnnies. Do you have a favorite story playing under him in Greece? What was it like playing under Rick?
Rick is one of those guys, man. He's got stories for days. Like, literally, he has stories for days. He will never tell the same one over and over for a whole season, because he's just that experienced. From his days coaching in college, to his days coaching in the NBA, coaching against Magic Johnson and Bird. It's he has so much experience. You just kind of want to be around it. And so when he's talking to you, you can't help but listen. And then when you actually try out what he's telling you to do, you see that it works. And it shows why he is, one of the best to do is to coach. When Rick came to Greece, The team I was on, we were actually well coached. We had a well put together team, but we were just playing like shit. Excuse my language. We weren't playing good, and our record wasn't good. And the type of team that we were usually in the top echelon of Europe. And that year, we were just doing bad. We were like in 15th place, 13th, 14th place, out of playoff contention. They ended up firing our coach, who was a really good coach, but they ended up firing him, and they brought in Coach Patino. And we probably had about 12, 10 games left on the season. And like I said, we were in 15th place. Well, Coach Patino was able to motivate us, tell us some things that we probably needed to hear as basketball players. Um, but he changed our season around, man. We ended up running down the last, I think, 9 games. We won 8 of those. 5 of those were on the road, and like 3 of those games were top 2, 3 teams in the EuroLeague at the time, and we were able to do that and run it down and make the playoffs. And so it showed me that as long as you have somebody that can deliver a message, get it across, and get you to believe and understand that it works. That's really what it is. You hear about coaches losing their locker room all the time. You hear about coaches, their players just want to play for them, because these coaches, it's the messages that they deliver. They deliver that message, and you understand it as a player, and it makes you want to go out there and try it. And Rick just gave us some things that, as players, real players, you got to look in the mirror. You got to say, like, nah, I know I can do this. I'm one of the best at doing this. When you can put that stuff together, put everything else aside, and put the team first, man, amazing things can happen. And Rick turned our season around in a matter of months. In a matter of 2, 3 months, he turned our season around, and it just showed, like, what he could do. Imagine if he had a whole season. Imagine if he had a team with his budget that he could actually run, like, how he thinks. He's amazing. He's amazing what he does, and I was fortunate to be able to be coached by him.
What quality of yours specifically, if you had to narrow it down to one or two, do you think will make you a successful coach?
Well, part of it is what I kind of just talked about, my ability to relate. My ability to relate and talk to my players, that's what it would be. Um, I've been fortunate enough to travel the world for 16 years as a professional, learning all kinds of different cultures and languages and having to adjust on the fly. And playing in Greece, I was on a team for 7 years, and I had 8 coaches. All coaches, all of them were prominent, but I was one of the players that stuck the entire time. I wasn't on the rosters that got guys cut and traded out of there. I stayed. The coaches were fired, and I stayed. So my ability to be able to adjust is one of those things that are, I think, huge qualities for a coach to have. Because if you can send a message, you can tell your players something, but if you can't relate to them and they don't have a reason to want to listen to you, I mean, they're just going to do what they want to do. You know. Um, and I have the ability to be able to talk to people and just get them to understand and believe that what we're doing is something that's going to help everybody. Everybody's going to benefit from it. Now, you do run into times where you run into roadblocks, you run into hiccups, and I've been in part of those situations where we've had to fix teams from the inside out during the season. I've been in those situations. I'm able to make decisions on the fly. I'm very strategic and cerebral when it comes to the basketball game. So all of those things I think are very great qualities when it comes into coaching. And it's just something that I really believe in. It's something that I know works. I've been running camps and clinics. I've been, played with all kind of players, played under all kind of coaches. And these are things that have gave me longevity in this game. So I don't see why it wouldn't translate from the other side of teaching it. I have the patience. That's one thing you have to have is patience. As a player, I probably say I wouldn't have the patience because, you're in the trenches, you're playing the game. You have to be on your game right now. We don't have time to wait till after the game to go to the video and see why we lost. I don't want to lose. And if I'm losing because you're not on your job or you missed an assignment or whatever, we got to talk this out. But as a coach, I can recognize that, okay, they missed it. They're not there yet. We need more time. We got to work on this. We got to work on this. We got to improve this. They got to learn this. I have the patience to do that as a coach. As a player, not so much. And that was another reason why I stepped away from the game.
I got one last question. This is a little off topic, but a big topic in basketball culture right now is the way that mainstream media has been covering basketball, specifically the NBA, with shows like First Take. Most recently, you see Stephen A. Smith got into a little bit of a beef with LeBron James. As a former player, I know you spent a lot of time overseas, but as a former player, and you're looking at the way that the media now covers basketball, just how do you feel about that and what the younger generation is kind of listening to and getting into when they're learning about basketball?
I think that everybody has their job. I think that everybody, is in their spots and in their place for a reason. The media that's happening now is no different from the media back then. They watch, they critique, they talk about it. You watch it because it's entertaining. You want to hear about people talking about your favorite players. You want to hear people talking about the players that everybody hates. This is what it's all about. As players, you can't focus on that. Not as an active player. Once you're retiring and stuff, now you're a fan technically. Unless you're working in the organization, you're a fan. Now you can actually have an opinion and stuff like that. But as a player, why are you giving it energy? Why are you paying attention to it when your focus should be the next game, the next play, the next practice, the next season, what you got to do to improve. And when you get, it's not easy either. Because, everybody's got these phones now. As soon as you get a phone, you're going to catch a tweet. The banner's going to drop down on your phone and you're going to see it. You can't avoid it. But it's like, what do you really give your energy to? What do you give your time and energy to? Because that's the distraction again. You can't buy into the distractions. You can't buy because it's inevitable. People are going to talk trash. Media's going to give their opinion, whether you're playing good or not. 1 minute they're going to love you. Next minute they're going to hate you. Next minute they're going to love you again. It's just the way life works. But to sit there and focus on what people think and how they care about you when your job is to simply play basketball. You get paid millions to go to the gym for a few hours out of the day. Like, at the end of the day, what are you really upset about? Because somebody said something about what you did. Somebody said something about a shot that you took. Yeah, you take it some kind of way emotionally because this is a craft or something you really live for. And so you kind of got to stand on what your image is now in these days because a lot of people can run with that and that's a thin line. But at the same time, man, the media they're not going anywhere. And now you got podcasters. They're not going anywhere. You got everybody's going to have an opinion. They're not going anywhere. At the end of the day, do your job. Hoop, man. Give them something to talk about, Hoop.
Thanks, James. We appreciate your time.
Respect,
That
man.
was awesome. Good luck.
One last question: LeBron or MJ?
It's always gonna be Michael Jordan for me, man. At the end of the day, though, they're all goats, man. They're all goats. Jordan is a mountain goat, and Bron is like a billy goat, or like one of the little fainting goats. Not that he's not a goat. It's just that Jordan's a different kind of goat, man.
After you said that, Mike's ready to never have you on again. So we appreciate it, James. Thanks for hopping on, and good luck with the coaching search. We'll definitely be following.
No problem, man. I appreciate y'all, and definitely keep doing what you're doing, man. You guys have been growing this, and it's been a pleasure to see you guys from afar. Really appreciate y'all having me on, and keep working, keep going. Good luck with everything.
Thank you, James.